need to start doing in the system that I have put together here? And what do I need to start doing on a daily basis so that when I wake up, that I'm productive? When I wake up 90 days from now, 60 days from now, that I'm actually getting the results that I want. You see, the idea of the magic pill, honestly, it's immaturity speaking. It's the child inside of us that really has this I want it now mommy mentality where we want instant gratification. That we want to, if we really want to become productive as we possibly can, we have to really grow up and grow past that. I mean, that might sound funny coming from someone who's age 23, but experience goes a long way, I guess. I mean, I spent tens of thousands of dollars thinking that magic pill existed, looking for it online, buying course after course, ebook after ebook, looking for the easy, quick fix solution before I finally was just in so much pain and so much discomfort that the only way to get the real solution was to step up and to accept the fact that a magic bullet doesn't exist. I'm gonna have to do the real work. I'm gonna have to dissect real sales funnels and build a real business. And I mean, even just going back to this doctor thing here, before I started my online business, and I've never actually told anyone this before, so this is a little candid right now. I remember going to the doctor when I used to work construction, and I was always tired all the time, and I didn't know what it was. And a lot of times people don't understand, like once we get into development and stuff, when we start to understand what our emotions and stuff are a little bit, or even how when we get that feeling of overwhelm, we just kind of want to shut down, like things are too much. There's too many senses. Some people go to sleep, some people eat. We have like these different things to even just distract ourselves so that we can shut down from the emotions and the things that we're feeling so that they're not really affecting us. I would go to sleep all the time. I didn't know what it was, so I went to the doctor, and I was actually put on antidepressants. And I was on those things for well over a year. And just talk about covering up an underlying problem. I mean, what is that really, what's that solving? It's making something go away for nothing. I mean, I was still tired all the time. It was ridiculous. I got put on these things that had to eventually be weaned off, and it was absolutely ridiculous. And it's because we were living in this culture of this magic pill. Something's a problem, I'm gonna go to a doctor, he's gonna give me a prescription, everything's gonna be okay. And that's the mentality that a lot of us have in a lot of the cases in our life. And the fact of the matter remains that treating the symptom like that, it's not accomplishing anything. It's exactly like pulling out the light when your oil light comes on instead of just checking and changing the oil and finding the underlying problem. I mean, if you're not happy, you're not satisfied, you're not fulfilled, just like what we talked about at the beginning of this webinar, I mean, are you being productive? Do you have the inner game and the outer game going on? And you really need to marry the two of those to really feel that sense of success, that sense of fulfillment, and really understand where your values come from. This actually reminds me of a story that I remember Tony Robbins telling about about someone that he actually had at one of his seminars. And he had this gentleman up on stage, and they were going over your personal values. And I remember him, Tony, asking the guy, like, so I mean, what is it that you really want most in life? And he said to be successful. That was like one of the highest things, was like the feeling, the emotion of success, of achievement, of accomplishment. And he asked him, he's like, do you consider yourself to be successful? And he said no. Well, Tony asked himself, like, well, what do you mean then? What do you need to do to be successful? He said, you need to earn $10 million a year. You need to have 6% body fat. And he just listed off all these other just realistic things. And Tony asked me, he's like, well, what do you do? He's like, I earn $8 million a year. I have 10% body fat. And he's like, just out of this reach. Like he was stopping himself because of his beliefs, because of his values, from ever feeling the emotion that he wanted the most. And he just couldn't believe it. This guy just seemed absolutely miserable. Miserable. Had what so many other people would consider to be successful, would consider to have a high level of achievement. And he was absolutely miserable because he had just put what he'd wanted most in life just outside of his own reach. So then Tony points out someone in the crowd, and he labeled him as the most audacious person he'd ever seen. The guy was just bouncing off the walls. And he asked himself, he's like, sir, how do you know when you're successful? And he wakes up, he's like, every day that I wake up above ground is a success. And you see, that was the rule, that was the belief that he had created for himself, that he had consciously created to ensure that he was feeling, that he was got to experience that emotion that he wanted every single day because of the rule, the belief that he created for himself. Every day that he wakes up above ground is a successful day. Just that little tweak right there. You see, this man, he was successful too in his own right. But I mean, he got to have that emotion. He got to have that level of ecstasy in his life just because he had made that little distinction for himself, because he made the conscious choice to do that. As compared to the guy on stage, it was something that he wanted more than anything, but he just kept putting it just outside of his own reach. So I mean, if there is something that you want, like when we set our values and these emotions and stuff that we want to feel all the time, we need to realize that, I mean, what is an emotion anyway? It's just this physiological storm that goes off in our brain. You know what I mean? It's like we have all these rules set up. Like everybody has different rules for their different emotions, and this kind of goes into like neuroassociative conditioning, where it's like some people will say like I can only feel loved if someone tells me that they love me, and they hear it in this auditory terms, or I can only feel loved if someone gives me a hug. When ultimately you can feel that emotion anytime you want. It's like you make the choice on the rule on how it's triggered for you, because you're the one that's ultimately creating that emotion to begin with. But anyway, I got a little distracted there. Anyway, so ultimately, I just want you guys to know, just beware of the culture of the magic pill and the instant results. I mean, it's seductive. It sounds sexy. We always just want to believe to a little extent that it's true, and even sometimes you get that curiosity. I mean, I even just did this a couple months ago just to prove a point. There were all these, all of those softwares. There were all these different software and stuff being sold on ClickBank, and I went and I bought like 4 of them, and like most of them didn't even have videos in them. It was ridiculous. They were just complete garbage. But it was like the sales videos and stuff were so good on them. I'm like, I even feel compelled here. I'm like, this is brutal. I'm like, I'm gonna buy these just to prove a point. And it is. They seem seductive. Something for nothing. We all wish that it was there. We all wish that it was true. But you see, if you believe in it too much, you'll end up trying a bunch of magic pills and they won't work, and you'll be worse off than you could have been if you just started doing the right thing from the beginning. If I would have started building the right business and got involved with pro right from the beginning, instead of spending tens of thousands of dollars buying all of that useless garbage, I'd be a lot further ahead than I am right now. A lot further ahead. So we can't believe in magic bullets for anything, really. I mean, just trust me. I spent tens of millions of dollars, or tens of millions. Jeez, I hope not. I hope somebody learned their lesson where they spent tens of millions of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars doing programs that just don't work. And ultimately, this one's a little outside of the box a little bit, but the last idea that I really want to share was an idea based on systems thinking. And that's that the short-term results of an action and the long-term results of an action, they're typically different and oftentimes completely opposite. Now, using food, for example, because that was some of the stuff we already touched on, it's most relative to the majority of the people on tonight's webinar, but just using food as an example, let's say you grab a big bag of Cheetos. And well, what's the short-term result of eating a bag of Cheetos? Well, at first, the short-term result, I mean, it's pleasure. You get to feel the crunchy texture in your mouth, the salty and the cheesiness and all this good stuff. And you get to feel the joy of swallowing that yummy food and how good it tastes, and just the immediate pleasure in your mouth. Well, what's the long-term result of eating those Cheetos? Well, usually in about 10 to 15 minutes, you'll notice that your energy starts to drop, that your body starts to freak out a little bit because there's just so much MSG and sodium in there. And I mean, if you do this for a long enough time, if you eat Cheetos for a long enough time, it's not just going to drain your energy because of the crap you're putting into your body, but I mean, you're going to gain weight. You're going to mess your system up. You're going to mess your whole system up. And I mean, it could even be as bad and as unhealthy as honestly developing a disease if you continue terrible eating habits over a long enough period of time. Well, what do we do when that happens as humans? What do we do when that happens as humans? We start to develop dis-ease within our body. Well, we stop paying attention to how we feel, right? We kind of start to numb ourselves a little bit, just like I'd said even with my personal experience there. You see, we get out of touch with our body and our emotions so that we start not feeling bad anymore. We just don't want to pay attention to it. Or even worse, we'll go drink some caffeine, or we'll go find something else to just change our state. This is when you see people go drink a beer or caffeine or whatever it is, just really to change our state, to pep ourselves up, because our body, it starts to feel weak or sick, and we really start to take some aspirin, and we just send